Hi, this is Coach Luka, and in this video, I want to go over common lifting exercises that people do that are just suboptimal. Some of those exercises are just waste of time and even dangerous. I've seen those exercises being commonly done from working as a coach at many different gyms over the years, and I want to share with you those exercises so you're not wasting time on those. So let's get started. Exercise number one is bosu ball squats or bosu ball anything. I don't like this exercise because when you're doing exercises like a squat on an unstable surface, you're not lifting heavy weight enough to sufficiently target your quad and your glute muscles, your leg muscles. And this type of a movement also is gonna impact your technique because you're shifting your weight from one side to another side, which can increase the risk for injuries. And there's no benefits to strengthening your leg by doing exercises on an unstable surface. People doing that exercise because they think that they're gonna have more core engagement. But the thing is, this is not a core exercise, this is a leg exercise. And also, yeah, you might have a little bit of more core engagement when you're doing possible squat exercises, but it's still not going to be sufficient enough activation in your core versus the typical strengthening core exercises like straight leg raises, cable crunches, medicine ball sit-ups, stuff like that. So just do the exercises on a stable surface. You're going to be able to lift heavier weights. You're going to be able to challenge your quad muscles better. You're going to have better strength results. You're going to lower the risk for injuries. So there's no point to do those unstable exercises on the bosu ball. And some people also doing that because they think that this is more functional. But throughout the day, when you're doing grocery, moving, lifting things, you're not doing that on an unstable surface. So there's no benefits from doing that. Just do exercise on an unstable surface. Next one, combo exercises, where people combining two or more exercises and muscle groups into a one exercise. Like for example, lunge to a bicep curl, or a deadlift to a bent over row, or a squat to a press. When you're combining big, strong muscles with smaller, weaker muscles, you're not gonna be able to sufficiently train those bigger, stronger muscles because your limiting factor is going to be the smaller muscle groups. So like for example, let's say you're doing a lunge to a bicep curl. You might lift heavy weight enough to target your bicep, but your legs are much stronger than your bicep. So your legs going to be undertrained because the limiting factor is going to be your bicep. If you're going to use weights that are sufficiently challenging your legs, then you're not going to be able to perform a bicep curl. Each movement, each muscle group have different strength, different limitations. So it's better to do those exercises separately. Do a lunge separately, follow up by a bicep curl. You can superset them, but combining many different exercises into one is a needless complexity, and it's not an optimal way to train. Next one is band kickbacks, where people using those type of exercises when they're doing a band kickbacks or a fire hydrant to target and strengthen the glute muscle. But the problem with that is this is not challenging enough, or there's not enough resistance to meaningfully work the glute muscles. This may be okay for like a warm-up, or if you recovering after injury as a type of a rehab type of a exercise. But to really grow your glute muscles and strengthen your glute muscles, you're gonna be much better off doing movement like lunges, squats, deadlift, where you can actually challenge those muscles, progressively overload. Because with the bent kickbacks, you can do probably like hundreds of those. And at that point, you're not really working on the strength or muscle building or anything like that. It's just more of a muscular endurance, but it's not a sufficient way to really target your glute muscles. Next one, single arm dumbbell press. I sometimes see people laying on the bench, they're holding a weight with one hand and then pressing with another hand, and then they switch. That's a needless complexity of those movements, and it's actually going to cause imbalances, because if you're holding weight with one hand and you're working and pressing with another hand, this other hand that holds the weight is getting fatigued, and is actually gonna produce less force, and you're probably gonna cause imbalances because you're gonna be probably doing less reps because this arm is already fatigued from holding the weight. And it's also creating instability, and the less stable you are, the less force you can produce, the less activation you're gonna have in the muscles that you really want to target. And it's just a needless complexity. It's better to do with both arms. It's more time efficient. You can actually challenge those muscles better because you're going to be able to lift heavier weights. And some people, again, using that to have more core activation and things like that. But again, this is not a core exercise. This is a chest, upper chest, shoulders, and tricep exercise. And if you want to really strengthen the core, do specific core exercises, but don't take away from the exercise that the purpose of it is to target your chest, shoulders, and triceps. So it takes away from those muscles when you're doing that type of a movement, and takes away from the core exercise. So it's just kind of needless complexity and a waste of time. Next one, wall sit. And I see that often being done in bootcamp classes or CrossFit type of gyms where people are in a sitting position and they hold in that position for like a minute or so. This is maybe okay for like muscle endurance, but to strengthen the legs, this is not the best exercise, because if you want to strengthen your legs, you need to incorporate the eccentric portion of the movement where you're lowering yourself down, and the concentric portion of the movement. The muscles get stronger, and you're going to build muscle when you're stretching the muscle under mechanical tension with full range of motion under control. And wall sits are just isometric, where you're not including that stretching and contracting or shortening portion of the lift. And it's also harder to progressively overload or challenge your legs, because if you're holding a wall sit over a minute, then you have to hold for 2 minutes, 3 minutes. So it becomes time inefficient. And at that point, you're not really working on strength. It's more muscle endurance. I mean, you can put more plates on your knees or on your legs, but it's not the best way to strengthen your legs. It's better to do those exercises in the full range of motion, like for example, doing a squat or a lunge. That's really gonna strengthen your legs. And also, I would say that's also gonna improve your muscular endurance. So that's one of those exercises that I feel like is just being overvalued. Next one, calf raises with a poor tempo. I see some people at the gym when they're doing calf raises, like on the machine or on the plate with the barbell, they're doing those movements very quickly where they're kind of going up and down quickly, and they're not really stretching and contracting the muscle. They're just kind of working on the tendon instead of the muscle. So if you're working on your calf muscles, you have to control the movement, really have that mind muscle connection where you're engaging your calf muscle under control, slowing down the eccentric, the lowering portion of the movement. Instead of just kind of going quick up and down, that's not going to really grow your calf muscle. You're just working more on the tendon instead of the muscle. So this is another common exercise that I see that people do. Next one is plank position. I feel like planks are overvalued because it takes away the dynamic movement. It takes away the full range of motion from your spinal flexion or spinal extension or rotation or lateral flexion. Takes away the concentric and eccentric portion of the movement, and it's hard to progressively overload on the plank. Again, after a while, while you're holding a plank for 2, 3, 4 minutes, that doesn't become a strength exercise. That becomes more of an endurance exercise. It's hard to progressively overload or adding resistance on the plank. You can also add plates, but if you're training on your own, it's hard to do that. And I feel like, again, plank is one of those exercises that is being overvalued and overused. If you really want to strengthen the core, work on those 4 movements of your spine: spinal flexion, spinal extension, lateral flexion, spinal rotation. And you want to use exercises where you can progressively overload with resistance, with full range of motion under control, We did a video about how to strengthen the core actually, so the link is going to be attached somewhere here in this video. But this is not the best way to, I feel like, to strengthen the core. Next one, dumbbell presses and the stability ball, where you're holding 2 dumbbells and the balance ball and you're just doing your pressing motions. And again, this is another exercise that is needlessly complex, because when you're doing dumbbell presses on a stability ball, your body might be shaking from one side to another, which can increase the risk for injury. You're going to create imbalances because maybe you're pressing on one side, but you're shifting to another side. And it's harder to really produce force when you're on an unstable surface, because the less stable you are, the less force you're going to be producing, because your body is going to be focusing more on balancing itself. And again, some people are using that for functionality or core exercise, but this is not a core exercise. This is a chest, shoulder, and tricep exercise. So this is another movement that I feel is needlessly complex. It's better to do on the regular bench. The presses are going to be much more stable. You're going to be able to activate and strengthen those muscles that you intend to, instead of doing on the Bosu ball. And I feel like some people doing, especially trainers, I see trainers doing that for the clients because they feel that the more complex, the more unique, the more cool looking the exercise, the more effective. But that's not true. The exercise that provides you more stability allows you to perform the movement safely, under full range of motion, with control, with proper technique and ability to progressively overload. Those are the best exercises. Not just because something is complex doesn't mean it's better. Next one, leg press with a very short range of motion. I have seen people putting a lot of plates on the leg press, and they're just kind of doing almost like a knee bend, where they're not really going all the way down towards the chest with their knees. They're kind of quickly pressing up and down. They're bending the knee a little bit, but they're not really activating the quad muscles. So I think this part of this is ego lifting, because you can just, add a lot of weight, but you're limiting, you have a short range of motion. So you're not getting the proper activation in your quad. And you also are putting a lot of pressure on your knees, and you can injure yourself. So lower the weight, go all the way down, make sure you have a full range of motion, you have proper technique, under control, and then gradually increase the weight. Next one is pulsating squats. I see sometimes on Instagram with some female influencers, or in the bootcamp classes, where people like put band around their knees and they just kind of doing pulsating squat, where they're going up and down. Sometimes I see that people doing that with the weight. I don't know what the purpose of the pulsating squats is. I think it's better to just go up and down under control, with full range of motion, with good tempo. The bouncing up and down, I don't see benefits to it. I think you're just kind of using momentum at that point and not really activating and contracting the muscle. Yeah, you might feel a little bit more burn in the legs, but just because you're feeling a burn doesn't mean it sufficiently contracting and working the muscle. Like during the wall sit, you're gonna feel the burn for sure, but that doesn't mean you're really strengthening your legs. The same thing, I can like really squeeze my bicep and do it for like 100 reps. I'm gonna feel the burn, but it's not challenging enough to really make meaningful adaptation or like send a signal to get stronger or bigger. So those pulsating squats, I feel like, are unnecessary and just kind of needless. TRX squats and TRX rows, or suspension squats, or suspension rope squats and suspension ropes, like rowing motions. I think they are overvalued. Maybe they are very good for like complete beginners or people who are completely out of shape, or older individual as a type of a beginner exercise. But I've seen coaches doing that for people who have been lifting for a while. And I think this exercise is just too easy, personally. I think it's not challenging enough, where people, it's basically doing a body squat. You're just holding on the ropes. It's actually even easier than a body weight squat, because you're holding the ropes, takes away from the balance and stability and the weight, and you're just kind of going up and down. I think a lot of people can do like hundreds TRX squats. So at that point, you're not sufficiently challenging the legs. And the same thing with the rowing motions and the TRX. At some point, those exercises just become too easy, not challenging enough. So it's better to use dumbbell motions or barbell or machine, where over time you can increase the resistance or the weight. And it's more time efficient, because doing 100 squats, 100 rows is time inefficient, and that's not really a zone where you're actually strengthening your muscles. Next one, core bicycles. I see people doing like quick movements, bicycles for the core, or jumps, or quick leg lifts, and that's not the best way to strengthening the core, because you're using momentum. There's not enough resistance. You're doing that type of motion quickly. You might get tired, you might feel the burn in your core muscles, but in order to strengthen your core, you need to really challenge those core muscles under resistance, and do probably around 6 to 30 repetitions, and really be able to progressively overload. Jumping like this, doing quick bicycle for many repetitions, that's not optimal way to really strengthen the core muscles. Next one, lifting weights too fast with poor range of motion and just kind of swinging the weight. I see some people, when they're lifting weights, they just kind of, when they're doing bicep curl, ladder raises, they're just kind of using whole body to it. They're not really focusing on mind muscle connection, where they're contracting the muscle under control. They just doing quickly with very short range of motion, and they just kind of lifting weight around, but really not concentrating and focusing on what they are doing. They're just kind of doing that just to do it. They're exercising, but they're not really putting their focus on the proper movement. Next one, combining many different exercises into one. And this is something that I've noticed in bootcamp classes, where people have many different stations, and in one station they're doing bicep curl. After that, they're quickly transitioning to a jumping jacks. After jumping jacks, they're doing plank. After plank, they're doing battle ropes, slams. Then, some type of a movement on the balance ball. They come back into another exercise to lifting. They're doing that in a quick pace, in a circuit style fashion. And this is cool. I mean, it's gonna allow you to burn more calories. You're gonna sweat, and you're gonna elevate your heart rate. I guess this is better than nothing, but it's not specific, it's randomized. But this is kind of like exercising, but not really training for anything specific. If you really want to get stronger, or you want to improve specific modalities, or energy system like strength, power, endurance, you have to have a specific program and work on that one thing, or maybe two things, but not everything, together. And mash together, and this is not effective way to really improve anything. Next one is when I see a partner or spotter helping too much someone. Like, for example, I see people doing a bench press, and someone is struggling, and the other person just right away just lift the weight and re-rack, and that's it. They're not allowing the partner to really fight for the rep and to really struggle. So that's not an effective way to train, to like really help someone or really train. Or I see sometimes, even coaches, I've seen it where someone is doing an exercise and the coach is helping them on all the repetitions. Like, for example, they're doing a bench press and they're helping them on all those 10 reps. If that's the case, that means the weight is just too heavy. So lower the weight. And if you are struggling in the last 2 reps, let your partner help a little bit, so you can actually challenge yourself and struggle for the rep, instead of just completely letting your partner finish the rep and that's it, right? So that's not, I see something that's also it's not effective or optimal way to train. Next one, overdoing on overhead presses or front raises. When you're doing overhead, presses and front raises, those type of movements target your front shoulders. And the problem with that is that you already have overworked and overdeveloped front shoulders from movements like push-ups, different variation of presses on the bench. You're already working those muscles a lot. So it's not necessary to add additional front raises or overhead shoulder presses exercises. This is not necessarily a bad exercise, but I think it's just not necessary because you're already, like I said, working a lot your front head of the shoulder when you're doing push-ups or bench presses and things like that. So it's better to target the middle part of your shoulders with exercises like lateral raises, variations, or upright rows, things like that. Because like I said, your front head is already overworked. Next one, ego lifting. And this is something that we already mentioned before with the leg press. But I see especially young teenagers, but also like, older adults too, they're just putting too much weight on the barbell, on the machine, and they're performing the exercise with a very short range of motion, quickly using momentum and not really doing the exercise properly. The problem with that is you're increasing high risk for injuries. You're going to beat up your joints and you're not really activating the muscles the way it should be activated. So this is another common problem that I see in the ego lifting. So it's like I said, it's always better to lower the weight, do the exercise properly, and then over time gradually increase the weight to challenge yourself. But the technique should be safe with a good range of motion. And this is another very common thing that I see at the gyms, the ego lifting. Next one, using machines or plates or different equipment exercises just for the sake to look fancy. And some people doing like different exercise on the machine, and that machine is not intended for that movement, like hanging on the lat pull down machine or doing like some type of a swing or the kind of crazy stuff that people do on this machine. That those machines are not intended for that type of a movement. They're doing like presses with the plates or bicep curl with the plates. It's just needless complexity. And I also seen like coaches prescribing this type of movements for the clients. And I feel like some people think that they're gonna be more unique, or coaches think that if they're doing exercise that's more unique or different or more complex, that means it's better and more challenging. But that's not the case. I already talked about it. So this is another common thing that I see people do on the gyms. And it's kind of funny, but it drives me crazy. Another exercise that I see people do, and especially like I see coaches prescribing that for the clients, where they attach a band on the squat rack and having them doing like pulling motion with the band for the back. And this is not necessarily bad. This is okay, but I feel like it's just too easy. Over time, I don't know. I feel like those clients that I've seen, they could have a better results doing those movements with a challenging dumbbell, challenging themselves with the barbell. And I feel like they could do those exercises with the band for like 100 reps. So it's just not challenging enough. And if you want to get stronger, if you want to build muscle, we need to use sufficiently heavy weight enough to really send the signal to get stronger. And if you're doing 100 reps with the band, that's not really strength training. You're not challenging yourself enough. And the last one, doing a random exercise without a plan. I see people coming to the gym and they're just kind of doing exercises based on how they feel, or just type of like a random stuff. And they're just coming to the gym without a plan. And that's better than nothing, right? It's okay to like, I guess adjust on the fly sometimes. But like if you really want to improve your physical performance by either improving your strength or power, endurance, or muscle build, or improve or work on your hypertrophy training, you really want to have some type of a plan, some type of a program. Doing random exercises is going to give you random results. So having a plan, having a program is going to help you to quicker get to the results or improve your performance that you want. So those are my common exercises that I feel are suboptimal, waste of time, or even high risk for injuries. And those exercises I've seen in many different gyms. There's many more than just that I just mentioned. Let me know in the comments, what do you think? What are the other common exercises that you've seen that are just kind of waste of time? Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next video.